Hi there! Have you considered what you can do with one single stamp set? Come join me and I'll show you how we transform one single stamp set in a complete memory keeping layout. See you in a bit. Hi there and welcome to a new episode of Inspired by a Card with Natalie. I am so glad you're here. Today we're going to use the Colorful Soul stamp set. This is from the newest release from Altenew, and the inspiration is going to come from Eric Thompson from the latest block up. I love the card design and I thought it was a great idea for a simple layout for my daily memory, my journal. So I'm just have my picture. I'm gonna put everything aside and get started. So what I have done outside of the camera, just to shorten and show you everything, is I repeatedly stamp one of the sentiments from the colorful stamp set with clear embossing ink to the bottom half of my cardstock, and I'm using 110-pound Nina Solar white Crest cardstock, and I'm actually adding a little bit of pearl translucent embossing powder, and all I'm doing right now is just heating it up, and that's just going to create the texture of the sentiment that I stamped at the bottom half of my layout. You're going to see that I've used a piece of post-it notes just to mask that area, make sure that I have a clean surface, I don't have a contamination of the color. Now that all my embossing powder has melted, you can barely see it, so I want to bring the texture forward. For that, I'm going to start using some ink blending. I am using Blueberry Crisp ink, and I'm going to follow the idea that Erin used for her card. She actually stamped the sentiment using gray ink, and then she blended the color right at the edges. I'm doing the same but in a different way. I'm bringing a bit of texture. So I am using, like I said before, Blueberry Crisp ink. You're gonna see that I'm using my large ink blending tool. So all I'm doing is just dabbing my ink blending tool on top of the ink pad. That's just gonna collect some ink and the bristles, and then I'm gonna go in a circular motion on top of the embossed area. That's just gonna bring a light color surface, and then once I'm happy with the light application, I'm using just a fiber cloth to clean any ink that's left on top of my embossing powder. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce the size of my background from 11 inches to 10, which is the width of my page. Now here's when I'm going to start bringing some of the interest that Erin added to her card. And what she did is she added a depthness of color right at the edge of the area that she stamped. So I'm going to do the same, but in this case I'm starting with a little bit of Cloudy Sky Crisp ink, and again I'm using the same ink blending tool. You're going to see that I'm just collecting some of the ink and I'm just ink blending it right on the outside area of that bottom half that I embossed. Once I am actually added the ink, I'm going to come in with a second coat, and I'm using Nimbus, which is in the same color family, and I'm just applying it, like I said, to the bottom edge of my layout. That's just gonna deepen the look of it. If you see the card, she actually used the same look. It's just that I'm choosing to have that texture come forward. Again, you're gonna see that once I'm finished ink blending, I'm gonna get my fiber cloth. I'm just gonna clean the top of the embossing area. That's just gonna take any ink that was deposited on top of that embossing texture, and then I'm gonna set it aside to dry completely while I work on my embellishments. So to create the embellishments for this layout, and you're gonna see that I'm gonna talk to you about the design too as we go along. I am using the same stamp set. Again, this is the Colorful Soul stamp set. I'm gonna use also the die set. And I'm going to use colors of ink that contrast nicely against the bluish background. So I am using inks from, let me just make sure that I get the same color. I'm using Pastel Sunrise and Canyon Clay for some of the, to bring that kind of peachy tone. I'm going to use Pink Diamond and Pink Alicious to get some of the pink, and I'm using Sunray and Chamomile to get some of the orange tones. And I'm just following the guide, the layering guide that comes with the stamp set inside the pamphlet of the stamp set, just to create that look. Now here's where I'm going to make the big difference. Instead of stamping the center of the flowers either with the darkest color of the ink or with black, I am choosing to actually emboss them. I want to bring some of that that texture idea that I already have going in the bottom of my layout onto the flowers. So I am using clear embossing ink, and I'm using antique gold embossing powder to create the center. So it's going to bring some of that shine, and it's also giving some of the texture. Once I have all my flower centers embossed, I am actually going to go ahead and use the anti-static powder and just add it to the center of my cardstock, and then I'm going to go ahead and stamp 2 of the sentiments twice because I want to use them to create my title and add the sentiment onto my layout. So you're going to see very simple, just some clear anti-static powder, and then I'm going to use my clear embossing ink from Altenew. I'm going to stamp the sentiments. I'm going to add some of the antique gold crisp embossing powder on top of it, and then I'm just gonna heat it with my heat gun, and that's just gonna melt the embossing powder and give you that texture. And I'm gonna use the die set to cut everything. So I'm gonna take it off the camera and just cut everything. I'm gonna cut 3 of the sentiments just because I want to make sure that I stack them and give them that chipboard look. So outside of the camera, I've already glued my picture. I had to actually make sure that when I trim my picture, I don't cut faces or bodies. So I make sure that when I size it, the center of the picture was where nobody was sitting. So I'm just gluing everything in place. If you see the original card, Erin used the entire background to add a piece of black cardstock. Instead, I'm going to replace that with my photo, and that empty space at the bottom, I'm actually going to create a pocket. So I'm going to create a tag that's going to slide underneath the photo, where's when I'm going to add my lines of journal. So you're going to see that I'm just creating my pocket right now. I have a piece left over of the cardstock that I ink blend, that edge. I'm using that to help me bring some of the bottom onto the top of the layout. I'm just creating my pocket. I'm going to slit the tag right there, and that's pretty much the body of my layout. So you're going to see that I've only used one stamp set in white cardstock and various colors inks. So now it's going to be all about just following the same design that Erin used for her card to create a row of flowers. Erin chose something very monochromatic using blues. I am choosing all these colors because the sentiment that I had is "you color me happy," and I wanted to bring that color onto my layout. So you're gonna see that I'm just going to combine the yellow, that orange, kind of corally tone, and the pink flowers in a row. I'm actually gonna use also the green leaves that I created just to break some of the monotony of the color and just giving some movement. I am not gonna add a dimension onto this. I'm just gonna glue them straight onto the page. So all I'm doing right now is just setting everything in place, and then I'm gonna come in with my precision glue pen from Altenew just to glue it all in place. Once I have them all ready, I'm gonna make sure that I use my guillotine to cut the entire layout in half so that the flower that sits right on the center, I have to make sure that it's glued on both sides of the page. So when I slice my layout in half, I have the flower on the 2 sides of the layout. Remember, I'm using a traveler's notebook that is actually ring binded. What I mean is, like, think of an album, so I gotta make sure that it's like, that I have that division on the middle. And then you're gonna see that I have my titles there in place, and I'm just gonna go ahead and glue everything together. Once I have that, I'm just gonna, like I said before, I created that tag with a leftover piece of paper that I had when I trimmed my layout from 11 inches to 10. So I just created a small pocket. That's what I added my lines of journal, and I'm gonna slide that underneath the photo. So all I have left to do is just attach my title, and I play with the idea of moving it around, but I think it's already busy at the top. I don't want to cover faces. I don't want to overwhelm the picture, so I'm gonna add it on top of the bottom half of my layout where I have all that texture. That's what I decided to emboss my sentiments with gold, so they stand against that white and blue from the background. And then all I'm doing is just bringing a few chipboards. I'm going with some circles, but it has the same tones that I have in the flowers, just to keep it simple, add some sentiment to the picture. And then the last thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of twine to the tag, so I'm able to pull it in and out. I love how this turned out. This came out so quickly, and I love the colors. Thank you for the inspiration, Erin. I love the card, and I thought it was a great way to translate it into a memory keeping layout. As always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care, guys.
Hello crafters, Jen here. For more tips, techniques, tutorials, and to discover which paper crafting products are right for you, subscribe to Altenew's YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Thanks for watching.